Hello, everyone. Today we are with Joan Murray. She is a senior editor in Apress, content acquisition for Microsoft. All of those interesting Microsoft books, Power BI, SQL Server, Microsoft AI, anything related to Microsoft technologies that you read. Not all of them is coming from Joan, but some part of it is coming from that, which is great. Joan, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, and thank you for having me on. My name is Murray, and I am an editor with Apress. Apress is a technical imprint, a technical publisher. So we focus on publishing books specific to the trade market. So specific to IT pros, developers, business workers. We do that collectively. I personally am responsible, along with a team of 3 other editors, for covering and writing books on the Microsoft space, specific to the Microsoft space. So, for example, I look a lot at machine learning and what's going on with .NET Core. I have a colleague who's very, very involved in the data space. And then another colleague who's even covering the gaming aspects of Microsoft. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
That's great.
We publish books.
So with all of these announcements this week at Ignite about AI, cybersecurity, all these kind of interesting features, the new features of Teams and things like that, how this is going to impact the roadmap that Apress has for publishing books?
Yeah, well, that's a really, really good question. So our publishing strategy in the Microsoft space is very much driven by what Microsoft is putting out there in terms of products, services, in some cases even hardware. So obviously, last year, Satya Nadella, at the keynote, he was very, very talkative about AI and what was going on, Power Apps, in the business intelligence space. We looked at that. We even looked at some of the things that are going on with quantum programming. We take those ideas, and generally when announcements are made, both at Microsoft Ignite and Microsoft Build, we will begin seeking out experts in the community, and sometimes at Microsoft on the product teams, to write content and create books on these new technologies. So specifically this year, there's been a lot of great stuff on the AI front, in machine learning and deep learning. So we've started publishing more books on the machine learning space, and we'll continue to do that. Obviously, there were some of the announcements around Dynamics 365 and how the AI is being integrated there in terms of the AR product. And so we'll be looking for a lot more authors and subject matter experts to write books, short content form, long content form, and in the format of video as well, to help us teach the community and get messaging out in terms of these new products, but also help different IT pros and developers in the community learn how to use these new technologies.
That's interesting. That's very good part of the, let's say, market of content generation that you are covering. One of the challenge, I think, is quite big in this area is the let's say pace of changes, especially with tools like Power BI or even in Microsoft AI space. It's like changes coming every month, every 2-3 months, big changes. How you can keep, let's say, the content up to date considering that?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, and one that every author pretty much asks about. And the answer is it's a challenge. 10 years ago, when we published a book, you might have 12 months of shelf life, you might have 18 months of shelf life. Now we have to be a lot more agile in our publications. So a book shelf life might only be 6 to 12 months if it's very feature specific. For the most part, we encourage authors to write on topics and include topics on best practices and the conceptual information so that we can kind of steer a little bit clear of some of those very detailed product steps and product specific, like, point releases,
Yes,
so,
yeah.
so that we can keep it a little more relevant. In terms of keeping it very, very timely, we use GitHub a lot. So we post errata, new content, especially in the developer space. Maybe if if there are new announcements, we work with the author to get updates there. So definitely a challenge. We do ebook publishing, and that has definitely helped a little bit. But Microsoft's, kind of rapid release program
Yes.
is
Yeah,
a
it makes
challenge.
everything harder.
Yeah. So the other thing we do is we try to update editions of a book in a timely manner. So
Yes.
as the topics evolve, maybe 6 months to 12 months out, even sooner than that, we will reach out to an author and say, hey, do you want to work with us on updating your book, updating the content, and then we'll work on a new edition. So
Right. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's
I
kind of
think
our
that edition is definitely helpful. Especially, I think the first edition, writing the first edition, is taking a long time. But adding into that,
it
it's
does.
like much quicker.
It does. And with that first edition, as you might have found, um, that is the hardest part. Getting the content out is easy, but kind of finding your voice as an author, finding your structure, your approach, how you want to kind of push the information and expertise you have out to the community. That is probably the greatest challenge step for a brand new author. Updating and keeping those new editions updated tends to be a little bit easier because it's basically kind of revisiting content in most cases, unless Microsoft completely discontinues a product or service or
Yes.
completely changes a product or service. So
Yes, yeah,
um,
correct. And how about finding not a speaker, let's say finding author in these areas, especially if it is new, if it is, let's say, quite brand new topic. How usually you approach finding content authors? Do you reach Microsoft contacts first, or what is your approach?
yeah, another great question. Some of this stuff is so incredibly new that we really reach out to some of the program managers and we try to talk to Microsoft. Some of the Microsoft marketing developer advocates or community folks, they're usually just really, really helpful in terms of giving us timely, accurate content. And then so there's a first wave of books, if you will, on a new technology. And so for some of those, we initially first reach out to the product teams, but a lot of our authors, many of them come from the community. They're MVPs, regional directors. A lot of them are, they're user group leaders who are out there in the community. And they tend to kind of have a lot of received information a little bit
Correct.
sooner than, say, someone who might be, just kind of trying to learn something new and not really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on at Microsoft. And I think, honestly, it's one of the wonderful things about the MVP organization is that MVPs, you guys get so much interesting content early on. You really get to get your feet wet with it and
Yeah.
just kind of really just jump in. And I think that's wonderful to have that accessibility and
Correct.
transparency. So
That early access is definitely helpful for creating
yeah,
all
so you
these
can even
contents. Yeah, be experienced in that product before everyone else does. That is definitely helpful.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely, absolutely.
So topics that let's say topics, book topics that you have in plan coming, let's say, in the next 6 months or so. Can you give us some indication of those topics?
Yes. Okay, so we've got a lot of BI topics publishing at the bookstore. Actually, Microsoft Ignite has a pretty good bookstore. I don't know if you've had a chance to check it out.
No, I haven't.
You will see some wonderful new books there next year based on announcements from this year. But we've got, we've just recently, I believe you had interviewed Wee Hyun Tak, and he has, he just recently worked with a couple of authors, co-authors on creating a new machine learning and Azure machine learning book. And so that just recently published. Azure machine learning, deep learning, those are all big topic areas. We've got books coming out on those over the next 3 to 6 months. Azure is just a huge area.
Yes.
And then, of course, Power Apps, Power BI, the collaborative workplace, Microsoft Teams. I mean, I was very pleasantly surprised at how many people are using Teams. I mean, that's just been such a big announcement here at Ignite. We just recently published 2 Microsoft Teams books, one of them by Melissa Hubbard on mastering Microsoft Teams, and then and Matthew Bailey also worked on that book. And then a second one by Balu Ilak, who's also a Microsoft MVP. So, we were very, very happy to have books in the bookstore on Microsoft Teams, and that pretty much came about because of our conversations last year and some of the announcements. So it's interesting, that the event kind of feeds the topics that we pursue. And then by next year, ideally, either at the Build or the Ignite bookstore, we have, we have publications. And hopefully I am looking forward to 2 new publications coming up from yourself, from Radhika. Hopefully in the bookstore next year, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
About those.
Been a long process. Hopefully it comes out.
It is a long process, and you really, many people love the idea of authoring, but it is no small endeavor. Even if you really, really are a subject matter expert and know your stuff, it's a lot of work. And when it publishes, it's a beautiful thing to see in the bookstore, and you feel like you've got something to be so proud of. But the process and the steps to get there, it can be challenging.
Yeah, great, awesome. So that was great coverage of all the things I want to talk about. Do you have any, let's say, last word for audience?
Last word, if you're interested in publishing a book, we're always happy. We're always seeking new authors and new talent. We look forward to kind of helping new authors kind of go through the process of authoring. I mean, it's something you discover pretty quickly, whether you love it or you hate it. But either way, authoring can be, just a great way to extend your platform and who you are, and out in the community. I mean, it's a nice calling card, if you will, for community and sometimes for potential new clients, and establishing yourself out there. So that's anyway.
Awesome, great. Thank you, Joan, for your time. It was a pleasure talking with you. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your Ignite.
Yes, there's so much going on, and thank you so much, and best of luck with your book.
Thank you. See you again.
All right.
Bye.